Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I'm here doing double feature with Michael Kester.
Yeah, we're going to do double feature for a change.
Deep Red is one movie. What's the other movie we're doing?
The Gore Gore Girls.
These are films that pet the white cat.
Yeah.
And we talked about that last episode.
Yeah.
Is when films seem like they're a lot harder than they are.
It's when you're scared by it's when you judge a film by its cover. And your judgment is that the film is terrifyingly heady and difficult, but it turns out that somebody in the film, that the villain turns around in a swivel chair and pets the white cat.
Right. It's a fucking cartoon. It's just a film, people. I mean, really speaking broader, that's what our entire show is about. If these two idiots can understand movies, then really anyone can do it. These are two movies specifically where the directors are talked about as if they're masters of their craft.
Cinema.
And whether or not they are masters of their craft is irrelevant. But what goes along with that is that their craft, the end result may be complicated and hard to understand. Mm-hmm. And it's really not. It's quite consumable.
Sure.
And we should make people very aware of that.
What we didn't talk about last episode was misogyny.
Oh, God. Yeah, you know what? We apologized in advance, and it wasn't good enough.
Well, we apologize. What happened is we apologized in advance for one show, but now we have to retroactively re-apologize because we didn't apologize for this show last week.
That's probably fine. I think there's I guess these are misogynistic, but these
in a different way.
Yeah, these seem like the usual celebration misogyny.
These are grindhouse misogyny.
Yeah, so
where it's actually secretly celebrating.
Right. Where, hey, aren't women great looking naked?
That's about right.
It's fun, and I don't know if it just feels wrong when Crank and Shoot 'Em Up do it.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into a discussion about why they're different or what. It just feels wrong when Crank and Shoot 'Em Up do it.
You know what else feels wrong is spoiling films before people have seen them.
Yeah, for 160-something odd weeks, we have been spoiling movies, except for those two crappy music box shows. And the Year End, which I don't know why anyone listens to. But listen to this show, but not if you've not seen the movies, I suppose.
Well, especially because these are kind of murder, mystery, Scooby-Doo-esque.
They are.
There's actually... part of the film is not knowing how it's going to end.
Whereas people like you and myself consider weird things
trailers.
Spoilers. Yeah, I mean,
the weird things that are called spoilers are trailers.
I mean, details from the movie.
Yeah.
I really don't even want to know what city the third act takes place in. But most people don't want to know who done it. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
That's probably what I care about least in a movie. But that's what most people don't want to know. And you're going to find that out, maybe, in this episode.
Now, if you don't want to, I suppose you could just chapter over all the way to the end and find out what we're doing next week.
You could use the chapters. You could also use the timestamps, which you'll find in the lyrics section and on the great Double Feature website at doublefeatureshow.com. You remember when we used to talk about donations every week and how grating that was on your ears? Now I'm just going to mention the website every fucking week, and you're going to wish I asked for money. You're going to beg.
In fact, if you send us a fixed amount of money that we are setting in our brains right now, we will stop talking about the website.
Oh, good. I like this. Hold the listeners' ears ransom. Deep Red is going to be the first movie, and we're not there yet. We haven't chaptered. Yep. Don't skip yet. There are sections that are inexplicably in Italian.
Yes,
and that's not just your copy of the movie. You need subtitles.
Okay.
We watched a little bit of the film without subtitles because I forgot.
Yeah.
I watched all of my Argento in pretty much 1 week of my life. A bad idea.
Yeah.
I have some trouble telling the films apart.
Sure.
It was really, I wish I spaced that out more. I didn't remember we needed subtitles.
That's okay.
Thankfully, I literally left my apartment, ran to a neighbor, got subtitles from her, and then injected them into our copy. Technical wizardry.
Now, you may also notice that in a standard whodunit murder mystery fashion, it sounds like a rainy storm is going on in our studio. That's intentional.
Right.
That's part of, we're trying to set the mood.
We've been getting together every day this week attempting to record, and it's never been noisy enough outside.
Yeah, we've planned it We've planned it for a day that there is a massive storm in Chicago. It took me longer to get here than ever because literally every traffic light in the city is out.
Great. If the shows sound like crap this year, we've just given up at the shows sounding good. Mm-hmm. I used to come on here all the time and say, we need more money to buy studio padding and all this great stuff. And everybody would email us and say, what are you talking about? Your shows sound great.
This is what you get for your compliments, bastards.
What you should have said is, here's $20. All right, let's get into the first movie, which is called Deep Red, or I think it's Profondo
Rosso.
Is that what?
I think that's what it was.
I don't know Italian. Not even a little Italian.
So it's Italian because it's Argento.
Yes. So what did we learn about Argento last time? Do you remember any of that?
Psychic animals.
Psychic animals. Good. We'll revisit that.
I know Suspiria tends to have strong female leads, so this is different.
Okay.
Like, I've seen... The only two real Argentos I've seen prior to Deep Red was Phenomena, a.k.a. Creepers,
right,
and Suspiria, which is, I'm going to say, his most famous.
I'll agree.
At least cultish film. And both of them have strong female leads. This one, not so much. But we do get Dill Dano in the lead.
We do. Yeah, and also there is some important bits of feminism in here. Beyond, the usual Argento woman fighting the whatever thing.
Yeah.
I think we have some... This is, by the way, if you chaptered around too much, you have chaptered into Deep Red right now and not even knowing you were doing it. I'm about to drop the first Deep Red spoiler, so chapter away once again.
Okay.
The killer at the end is a woman.
Yes,
right?
that's true.
There's also some interesting notes about homosexuality. There is, which I don't know if that necessarily falls into feminism, but it's at least part of that open-minded, almost cinematic activism that we see a lot when we talk about, stuff from the Grindhouse era, stuff from the 60s and 70s.
There's also some insightful notes about stabbing small lizards.
That's strangely in there, too. Probably, no, I'm going to say definitely not related to feminism.
But they are probably psychic lizards. We can definitely safely assume that the lizards are psychic.
Ghana's a much more interesting lead, or I guess, the Watson of this.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, the second to our detective, right? The partner. What do you call the person who helps out the detective? Isn't there a term for that?
Robin.
Once again, double feature. Not a place to go for information. Not a place to go at all. Steer away. When we get to Gore Gore Girls, we're going to see the female lead is more of a floozy.
We're also going to see a lot stronger of a Sherlock Holmes character.
We certainly are. Yeah, we definitely are. This is really the more subtle of it.
Yeah.
Who would have ever thought? That's how you know you're in petting white cat territory.
Yeah, it's true.
So our leading lady here is not only the smarter of the two in the pairs today, but I mean, she challenges him to arm wrestling.
That's true.
There's some serious notes in here. I think she is well representing. If Argento isn't, she is well representing the
strong
female
character.
persuasion.
Sure.
Right? And there's some back and forth between her and the lead over, what's different between men and women or whatever. And at least having that dialogue is, I mean, when we saw Crank and Shoot 'Em Up last week, by comparison, almost every film will seem feministic.
Well, also, that kind of dialogue is one thing that this film does that's almost surprising. It's really one of the more screaming pet the white cat moments is the tone of humor that the film has. There are moments where it's very serious, very scary, very dark, very woman gets her head impaled on glass.
Sure.
There are also moments where David Hemmings has to sit in a silly car.
Sure, yeah.
And he has to be in an uncomfortable seat, and you barely see over what should be in my head. In my head, he has a mustache because of Dill Dano from Barbarella.
Right.
But I guess in this film, he has no mustache. But you barely see his face because he has to sit in the funny car.
Yeah.
And that kind of awareness of humor is a very, very clear indication that we were too scared of Dario Argento.
And this is certainly humor not found in his other films. I mean, I think this one stands out the most for having only these, what are in his other movies, just brief moments of humor. Here, that's really what gives the movie its character.
It's true.
It's these personalities you'd like to be around, solving this mystery together while they're doing these kind of quirky things. I mean, the low seat is a go-to for that. But even the conversation that they have where he's talking to her next to the steamer, that just seems to go on almost like Three Stooges routine.
It's true.
Getting out of the roof of the car seems like it should be Benny Hill tape spec.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire thing, it it gives it more character, and that's why I wanted to do this one first.
Sure. It also gives it another half hour.
It certainly does. It pads it out nicely. And so that's one of the things that's maybe a bit unlike Argento, or informs you more about his other films. I think another thing that's very Argento about this is Goblin, which we talked about,
sure.
in the last film we did.
Yeah, and again, I know I keep bringing up Suspiria, but I'll warn you for the rest of this chapter. Suspiria is really my strongest knowledge of Dario Argento. Sure.
Go back to it.
I really enjoyed Suspiria, and the soundtrack they reuse part of the soundtrack, or at least
I
part
think
of the
sounds
song.
Vaguely like it. I don't know. Is it the same
They
one?
reuse part of the song.
I'm going to hold you to that.
It may not. It may be a version of it. It
Okay.
may be a slightly different arrangement. But the song Suspiria does resurface in here, minus the didgeridoo.
Right. Okay. I like how you left yourself a tiny escape for when people email us and say it's not the same goddamn song. The Goblin ass kicking on the case music is incredible. Yep. It's it's
where you don't want to die.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if that song kicked in during my death scene, I would be pissed. It sounds like there's a bunch of great stuff that's going to happen directly after we get past this momentary. It sounds like the setup to a great film, and it just happens over and over. That fucking that wonky bass. And, oh god, it's great. And there's few things I have seen from horror directors. It borders on Eli Roth, sex and violence, that are as effective a combination as Goblin and macro shots of toys.
Yeah,
it's so effective. I don't even question why it's in the film.
Yeah, well, my only thought, and this is just a weird thing I have with film, where I see something and in my head I think they wanted that to be the opening credits.
Sure. Yeah.
But for some reason decided against it. That's how I felt about the creepy toys and the Goblin.
Perhaps too good is why perhaps they thought, I'm going to stick this in my film where I need
Sometimes I think that about why there isn't stuff at the end of credits in films.
Sure.
I see a scene, go, that was an end of credit film that ended up looking too good.
Too much work put into it. We need people are going to leave by now. We need to inject it into
kind of
the
how I felt about the X-Men film.
Right. If we could bring this down just a notch here, when you're considering a lot of these classic horror films, the easy identifier to go to, if you walk in on somebody else watching a horror film, and you need to pick out, is it your Argento, or maybe your Miike, or your Herschel Gordon Lewis, the color of the blood is strangely a great indicator of this.
Yeah, it's true.
And you'll see this watching these two films back to back, because it almost appears as if it's a different liquid coming out of people's veins. With the Argento stuff, it tends to be more on the orange side.
Yeah,
the consistency's a lot different, and we'll get into the raspberry jam that is Herschel Gordon Lewis in just a moment. But visually, I find Argento's kills, besides something as simple as the color of the blood, to be a bit more. It seems weird to say intense with what we're going to talk about.
Theatrical, maybe
with the Gore Gore girls. They're maybe even violence, not the right word. So much as just painful, horrifying, a little fucked up.
Yeah.
If we ever get into covering something like opera, or a lot of these kills, they just seem like things you would not want to go through. They are, maybe that makes them more serious.
You wouldn't want to die.
Yeah, I was trying not to boil it down to that. You know what it is when you think about worse ways to die? Yeah. I mean, these
you think about worse ways to die, you wade through the Hatchet films. Yeah, and then shortly down the list of after Adam Green and a few others, you come to Dario Argento.
Yeah, we'll never get a better point of comparison than I'm just gonna fucking ruin this. This is just gonna happen. Running over the head.
Yeah.
And
whoops.
You know what? I mean, if you watch the two movies, you got it. Somebody's head gets run over strangely in both of these films.
That was unintentional.
I don't know how that happened. Something in my subconscious probably made me pair these for that stupid reason.
Something just went through your mind. Was it a tire?
And again, I'm going to shelve this a bit for Herschel Gordon Lewis, but you don't get a better sense of what I'm trying to say here with my awful use of the English language than seeing a head run over in a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie, where it's momentary and awkward, and you're not really sure what you just saw. And then seeing it in an Argento movie where someone gets drugged through the streets painfully before their head is inevitably smashed. The one other thing that really reminds me of Argento here is part of this detective story. is the Tenebrae sort of investigation that happens. And you see that a few other places in Argento's work, and we almost saw that a little bit in Creeper. I mean, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, for sure.
When we watched Phenomena, I don't know why we ever use Creepers.
I don't
I'm pretty
either.
sure
I think it's kind of a joke.
I think nobody ever called this movie Creepers. One guy who designed cover art at some point.
Yeah.
There was definitely an investigation there, although by some psychic bees or whatever.
Well, it was a psychic bee, Dr. Loomis, and a monkey, I think, were the investigators. The chief investigators in the Phenomena case.
It is so strange, Argento's fascination with psychic animals. I just don't... We covered it enough on Phenomena, but they make a point of bringing it up for basically no reason in the beginning, before they kill off the psychic.
Yeah, they kill the psychic.
Been a much different movie had they not just killed off the psychic. And the killer herself is a woman. The mere fact that we never would have guessed that because she's a woman says as much about feminism as anything I could say about that choice.
Well, and that's one of the things that's really kind of surprising about this film, is it seems like the basic whodunit outline, it seems like the whole time you're watching it, it's red herringing you to pick one guy, which leads you to believe that it's not going to be this person, it'll be this person.
Right.
And I know it's going to be this person. But by the end, I was legitimately surprised and, furthermore, did not feel cheated. Those are two things that rarely go hand in hand in a whodunit film, Jason 5.
Especially with you. I think it's usually one or the other.
Yeah, either I see it coming
both.
or I feel cheated.
One of the great things about not feeling cheated with that, when we talk about these films, you can watch again, and if they hold up or they make any sense, or they just do that thing High Tension did. When you see this movie again a second time, it is so fucking obvious that there is a woman standing in a mirror. So obvious. They make this big deal about where did that other painting go or what was that about, and then they kind of, just brush it under the rug. When I saw this again, I was like, oh, they're showing us the killer right there. It's her standing in the mirror. And the fact that they can plant that in there in such a way where, just like our protagonist, you don't see it the first time. But you believe the end Scooby-Doo moment where, oh, isn't it so obvious? It was right under our noses the entire time. That's a hard moment to pull off.
Yeah, it is.
That's a very difficult thing to effectively, really make come through in your film. And I think it works, absolutely.
It does. It really does.
So credit to the movie for that. Credit to the movie for the tension it builds, which is good. Man, the scene where the killer is in his apartment and he's playing piano.
Yeah.
And there's tension and the phone. Well done. Seriously. Amazing. Another scene when the investigator is killed. And the movie is seriously just, upped its game. And the doors fly open. And the mechanical doll comes in. It looks like a ventriloquist
Looks
dummy.
like something out of the Saw films.
It is creepy as a motherfucker. I cannot believe how effective that scene is. We really should have done this before the game, because we're always looking for reasons to pad another 2 or 3 minutes into that episode. This would have been perfect. How fucking great! What about that scene is so amazing, right?
It is.
It's so brief. Why is it so good?
I think it's because you're terrified that a killer is going to come through and kill him, and then it turns out to be a doll, and the only thing you can think of is, I wish that were a killer, because I don't know what that thing's going to do.
It's the unknown.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely what it is. You don't know how it's coming towards him or why.
And you don't know
what
how to
it's
kill it.
Do. Yeah, certainly. Is it going to injure you? It's so unexpected.
Does it explode?
Does it explode, right? What is this going to do to kill or maim me? You find a doll hanging suspended from the ceiling, by a noose. Why is it there? What does it mean? These are really the moments. While the films are fine and I'm having a wonderful, wonderful time with them, they get to these moments like this, and I start to think, okay, these are the notable moments. These are the things, to talk about icons, to talk about things you will remember for fucking ever. Mm-hmm. The images of the movie that stick with you. These are really the effective moments that are created like few other people can make them. There was something just for my own amusement that I'd like to ask you about. I felt really thrown off when I first saw this. After he discovers the secret room and he gets hit, the very next shot, doesn't that seem to reveal our female lead as the killer?
Sure, yeah, it definitely.
You do
looks
get
like...
that sense,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Is that just us? Is that intentional?
I don't know. I think it's intentional. Well, the whole time you're basically watching for people with eyeliner.
Sure, yeah, the eyeliner's also trying to be a red herring here, so that's definitely
It's
true.
not trying to be a red herring. It's just a clue that you always misconstrue.
Okay, yeah, no, I guess that's true. I guess that's absolutely true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it's just because man, you're right. It's so intentional from the movie's part. I didn't even think about that. Outside of that, though, all it does is it accomplishes this by presenting this scene to you without context, so you feel like it's a clue.
Right.
You see this eyeliner, and so you assume, oh, this must be a clue. So I never even put that together.
Yeah.
I just thought, the movie's presenting us a shot of eyeliner for no reason, which it's totally allowed to do. You can do that in a film.
Sure.
And we just go, well, what is this clue? Does this inform more about our killer? You want to talk about under your nose the whole time. We get a Sleepaway Camp-esque flashback
Yeah, we do.
early childhood issues.
It's really creepy.
And you know what's great is it really pulled off this sort of, it's not a flying tom-tom, it's more bookends, I guess. Mm-hmm. But this moment where you think to yourself, oh yeah, I remember that from the beginning of the movie. You have a Black Christmas sort of, I don't know if that's just the time that makes me feel that, sort of kill in here. In the very beginning, very artfully shot, incredibly theatrical kill with silhouetting and shadowing and, this bloody knife. And when we come back to it, in the end, once again, it does this effective thing of making you feel like an idiot for having the pieces in front of you.
Right.
Although I don't know if that's something that, even if I were to pause it before a reveal and say, okay, think back to the beginning of the movie. Do you remember anything? I'm not sure that actually tells us anything.
No, I don't know if it does either.
I think just coming back to it gives us that false sense of we missed
I knew
something.
it the whole time.
Yeah, and we really should have been watching more carefully.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I've had enough Italy, and I'm really kind of itching to get back home.
Yeah, this is amazing when this just seems to happen all the time. We feel like Chicago's never in films. Ever in films. And we also feel like there's not enough nudity in films.
Very true.
However, this year on Double Feature, we're really just hitting the staples over and over.
Fantastic.
Herschel Gordon Lewis is an interesting guy. He's the author of The Businessman's Guide to Advertising and Sales Promotion.
Sure. Familiar.
I guess he's actually written a lot of books. He grew up in Evanston, which, I mean, is near Chicago.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the end of the Red Line.
Probably more important for being the home of Mean Girls.
Yes, it's true.
When we talked about that. And he's got a degree in journalism. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't seem to do films first. And as he seems to announce with pride at the end, the movie is over, I think he knew he made bad films. I get this sense that this is somebody probably between Russ Meyer and Ed Wood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody who is very enthusiastic about what he's doing. And maybe just a little bit more aware than either of them were. We talked about Blood Feast a tiny bit on the Music Box show, but we never really covered Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Yeah, we also talked about him a little bit when we did Wizard of Gore with that crazy guy.
Yeah, that's true.
Not Crispin Glover. Yeah, Jeremy Caston.
We talked about Herschel Gordon Lewis with Jeremy Caston, as a name, right? As somebody unapproachable. I feel like we're just now starting talking about him, though. Mm-hmm. And it's a strange place because this is really his last film until he did Blood Feast 2.
Right, which was last year, 2 years ago?
It was a few years ago, yeah. But I mean, there's a 30-year gap or something in there.
So what was he doing in the meantime?
Well, so this is kind of weird. It seems like he retired from film.
Yeah, well, sure.
Came out of retirement to do Blood Feast 2, which had John Waters. And something called The Utto Show, which I have not seen.
Okay.
But is apparently about a game show where when you get an answer wrong, you get a limb removed.
Wow.
Yeah, something I need to see as soon as we're done recording today. He got out of film and he kind of went back into marketing, into sales things, into copyright law. And that's it makes sense when you think about it. Mm-hmm. But to think that Herschel Gordon Lewis, the first thing he knew was copyright and marketing. And the second thing he knew was, filmmaking. And it was just his hobby. It certainly excuses his films a bit more.
It does, if they need an excuse.
Well, the reason I think we're doing Gore Gore Girls, even though it's his last film before this huge break,
right,
is because the production values are about as high as they're going to get
true.
out of one of the movies of that era, one of his movies of that era. They're on par with, on his best day, they're on par with something out of Russ Meyer's Up.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say Up, yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes these midnight movies, that makes them the kind of thing that would show up at the music box, is these low production values.
Yep.
When we talked about what gave the Argento stuff its own kind of class and character, part of the low budget and barely held together, and I could almost have done this in my backyard with my friends nature
Right.
of this, that's definitely one component to the name Herschel Gordon Lewis. I think the other thing is the creation of the splatter film.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that the name splatter film
Sure.
is-
Well, sure, even that. That was something I think Romero called the genre kind
Yeah.
of splatter films. Or really the Gore film.
Yeah.
We're always hesitant to point somebody out as the first person who ever
To do
did
anything.
whatever, because they're probably not. No idea is original, and we could
because
go back
we don't
as-
watch black and white silent films is why.
That could be it. It could be that, or you could... I think even on year 25, when we get into black and white silent films, we'll find that people will email us and say, those things Fritz Lang did were actually done in theater in China
Sure.
21 centuries earlier. You're always going to find an earlier source, but this is part of the popularization.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
This is certainly a huge bullet points looking back in that timeline. When you consider more modern films, everything from Cannibal Holocaust to Splat Pack to French New Extremism to fucking Rambo 4.
Yeah.
A ton of the stuff we've covered.
That was a good list.
It's not hard because you look back through movies we've done, and any of them that have gore in them, a heavy degree of gore, you can make this argument even for films outside of the genre.
Yeah.
When you start to get outside into things like spaghetti western, although that's still kind of exploitative. War films, a lot of
Yeah.
these different films that use Rambo. I guess Rambo was a good example because that felt gory, given where we put it on the show and stuck it with 300. But that itself is not. It's not a splat pack kind of film. It feels like it is.
Yeah.
And that comes from the old Herschel Gordon Lewis stuff. So you make these things for cheap. He paid for them using money from his Chicago-based advertising firm.
Okay.
And so here we have a movie set in Chicago.
Starring Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, let's talk about Abraham Gentry a little bit. This guy's supposed to be a playboy, right?
Okay.
But he lives in a tiny, crappy apartment.
Yeah, he does.
When our lead, when they're first introduced, Amy Farrell, who's Nancy in the movie, ridiculously attractive. When I get that final strip show, I almost feel a little cheated. Do you
Yeah.
feel cheated by that?
Oh, yeah. Stunt boobs.
Yeah. Should have used some stunt boobs. It could learn a thing or two from Crank. Were
Yeah.
those stunt boobs in Crank?
I'm going with yes.
Just bring the misogyny right back. Thanks, double feature.
Thanks, stunt boobs.
Stunt boob, please. It's rare that you only get one in a film. They've shown us so many naked women. We really can't complain at that point. But
We can always complain.
you want what you can't have, and what I want is Amy Farrell naked. And I'm a little upset that if I could get anybody naked in the film, it couldn't be Amy Farrell.
I'm sorry.
So he lives in this tiny, crappy apartment, which every time I see this movie is fucking hilarious to me. They walk in, and it's a hallway, and it's basically a studio apartment. But he's supposed to be this exquisite guy. He dresses in these nice suits, the way he talks.
Sure.
I also don't believe that he likes women.
No, I don't.
I'm not for a second.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I'm pretty sure he's a virgin, but probably
Right.
a gay virgin.
And it's funny to even complain about nudity in this film because the light and the camera work is so terrible.
It's true.
So terrible. It's under or overexposed in every scene. It may
Or
even
both.
somehow be both. I was just going to say that. Seriously. Under and overexposed. Somehow. I don't know. The use of a single... When I talk about David Fincher movies, I'll mention spotlighting just as, a tiny pool of light. This is spotlighting. It's literally, hey, let's light our set using a real spotlight. And the camera and the development of the film, everything about it is so crappy. I'm not even sure. I feel like this would be safe on PBS at 3 in the afternoon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost to that point where sometimes you're watching nudity in a film, and if it's done extremely well, to where it's extremely graphic, not to always say those are the same thing.
Sure.
But if you've somehow managed to pull this off, I have seen nudity in the film. I feel uncomfortable even watching with you.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable telling other people. Maybe Russ Meyer's Up was a good example of that.
It's a great example.
I feel uncomfortable around anyone watching, and I am one half of the people on this show who constantly tell our listeners to send us naked pictures.
Right.
Which, by the way, may also fall in that category sometimes.
Of being uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Whatever.
In this movie, by contrast, it almost feels like they're wearing body paint because they are so washed out, and that's part of the style.
Yeah.
That's part of when you think back to a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie or you try and copy that look, that's what you'd be doing. But you see these strip scenes, which I'm also convinced that Herschel Gordon Lewis does not know how to shoot a naked woman.
I'm pretty sure Herschel Gordon Lewis, by his own admission, doesn't really know what he's doing.
The girls' bodies, I mean, they're already all detailless white figures.
Sure.
Mannequins. Mm-hmm. But the poor composition is, I suppose it's surprising for Herschel Gordon Lewis, but in a way it makes sense. It feels more like, maybe because I'm used to the Russ Meyer stuff.
Yeah.
I'm used to these nudie films that, you know, Meyer we think of as the king of that stuff. And
sure.
Are you to add a little bit of gore, you suddenly start getting the Herschel Gordon Lewis stuff.
Well, when we get into step 2 of our Rocky process, I think we'll have a lot to talk about on that front as well.
Do you?
Oh, yes.
Interesting. More nudity to look forward to. Just keep enticing the listeners with naked people. Russ Meyer was a photographer. Yeah. I mean, there was a guy, we talked about the stuff he did in World War II and the stuff he did for, I think it was Penthouse or Playboy, one of the early magazines, right? Mm-hmm. He knew how to compose a shot and operate a camera. He knew technically what he was doing. Whereas what you see out of Herschel Gordon Lewis kind of looks like if you gave a horny 13-year-old a camera, what he would try to do to film the bodies. Right. You know, it's moving around a lot. It kind of stays on, it's this awkward area. You're much more of an ass guy than I am. That's true. Just not the parts of the female body I care about. Uh-huh. But I feel like this isn't an ass shot like we got in Cabin Fever.
Oh, Cabin Fever ass shot.
This isn't a glorious pedestal this is being placed upon. It's more of an awkward back of the thigh kind of shot.
Yeah, it's true. But the one thing that Herschel Gordon Lewis is undisputably one of the masters of is the grossest fucking digging your hands through chicken gizzards to the point where you're watching disgusting inner display. Right. And you don't even know what you're supposed to be seeing. Right. You just want to puke.
Yeah, it's this sort of, I mean, that's how he's accomplishing the gore. It seems like it's a paper mache head and just pounds of jelly and
and people are digging through it. And it's to the point where you don't know what you're looking at. Yeah, right. You've lost contact, you've lost context. Right. And you're just seeing this disgusting thing. And the fact that the camera's fixed and won't turn away lets you know you're supposed to be uncomfortable. Right. And so you are.
At a bowl of jelly and a fake face. Yeah. I mean, crushing the faces in this movie is almost as good as crushing the melons in this movie. I love the fruit crushing guy. For no reason, where do you come down? Not that anyone gives a shit, but I'm going to ask you just to entertain this momentarily. Yeah. Where's the mystery here for you? Do you have any idea what's going on? Let's play the whodunit for a second.
Yeah. Well,
Is it the fruit crush guy? I mean, who did you have fingered for this crime?
I think I had him. I didn't really care.
Right. That's why I said that.
My interest was in other places, but I figured it was him just because he was somebody that I wasn't paying attention to.
Right, right. And it seems so obvious, and you don't know. That's how you completely disarm people. Yeah. You don't know where Herschel Gordon Lewis is coming from. You don't know if he's this guy who's making films on the weekend, or if he has any clue what he's doing. Right. We'll hold him up now as a champion for how far, he's brought us. And the bizarre, incredible pieces of stand-on-their-own filmmaking that we're looking at here.
And burn victim murders.
You just don't know, though, when he's writing a story like this. We'll start to see some of the similarities between his other story. Yeah. We even did in Blood Feast. I mean, a lot of times it's the same sort of reoccurring story, and I just don't know how to call this. And so I don't know if it's the melon guy. The last person I suspect is really the woman. Yeah. And sure enough, she's doing the ass tenderizing. Yeah, it's true. She's frying the faces. Yeah, there's so many interesting scenes of gore in here. The one that gets picked out all the time is the face iron and the nipple milk. Yeah. where
that one's weird.
It seems like it's chocolate milk out of one nipple. It's often called, the chocolate milk shot or whatever. That's how people refer to it. But I'm not sure if it's supposed to look like chocolate milk or not. If that's part of his gag, or if the lighting on that side of the frame just sucks. It's impossible to get a good enough print of this film to have any clue what... This is a movie that...
I don't know. I think the definition of good enough is debatable.
Well,
I think there are people out there, myself included, that want it to look like chocolate milk.
No, I agree. I 100% agree with you. But if I'm going to try and answer some of these unsolved questions, I need a clearer print of this movie to have any clue what's going on. I feel like we watched the movie on a fairly decent size television, high definition, all that great stuff. As high definition as you can really get out of this. I feel like if we watched it on a 13-inch TV, if we watched it on the Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer TV,
dinner,
we may have understood a little bit more. Or maybe if you watch it and squint, it makes a little more sense.
Or if you watched it when it came out and everything looked that shitty and your eyes were accustomed to no detail.
So Marlene falls, and you're not even really sure she fell off a balcony, because she didn't. She walked out a door and then tripped.
Yeah, They kind of point out that she did it, and you're like, oh, well, she's boned. And then she walks out, and you're like, well, I guess she got away.
Right. And then in about a second and a half scene, a truck runs over her face. And I feel like I've seen this before.
Yeah, and the detective goes, well, she always did have a truck running over her face. And you get this very Sherlock Holmes reveal where he explains, this is how I knew it all along. And he recaps and goes through... I don't know how familiar you are with Sherlock Holmes.
Not at all.
But this is verbatim.
Sherlock Holmes' smarter brother. The adventure of Sherlock, I'll never know.
But this is verbatim how Sherlock Holmes stories end. He wins, and then there's a gloat session where he explains to Watson how he knew all along and how Watson was being strung along the whole time, but Sherlock Holmes was on top of things. And then we have Abraham Gentry turn away the hot piece of ass and go back
and break the fourth wall.
That's true.
What is it, the third or fourth time in the film?
I think that's the third.
I've never known. Maybe I'm more conscious of it.
More times than M.
I'm watching it with you, and we had this fair debate about this on M. But 2 Fritz Lang references in the Dario Argento, Herschel Gordon Lewis episode. Not sure why that's necessary. But so maybe I'm more aware of it as I'm watching it with you for the first time. And I always remember the ending, the pull down the curtain versus we announce with pride the movie. That's really the best way to... I think that's how I'm going to end my films. We announce with pride, this movie is over. How can you be mad at the film after that?
Yeah, you can't.
But previous to that, there's at least once where he definitely breaks the fourth wall. And then there's once where he breaks the fourth wall briefly before this in a struggle.
Yeah.
So you're not really... It almost doesn't seem like it should count as breaking the fourth wall because that implies there's an audience.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It seems like he's actually just talking to Herschel Gordon Lewis as they're making this film. And ultimately, that's one of the characteristics I feel about the Gordon Lewis stuff. It's this feeling that you are there with them making this crappy 3 people on the set film.
Sure, and I love it. I really do love it. You can't
top that. So there's this website. It's doublefeatureshow.com. And on the website, we have Bad Cat. Right?
We do.
And Bad Cat has its own portal now, its own page that you can go. You can read a little bit about Bad Cat in case you don't know why that's on there.
You need to know the background of Bad Cat.
But it's actually on the toolbar or whatever at the top of the site, right next to list of films from A to Z.
Sure.
You have Bad Cat as if that's an equally important part of Double Feature.
It's a very, very necessary utility.
You didn't need it this week, but you may eventually need Bad Cat coming up. What are we doing next time on the show? Doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. What are we doing next time on the show?
Next time we're going to do some... okay, this is weird. We're going to do a Tarantino-Rodriguez double pair-up on Double Feature.
And one of these has to be Grindhouse, right? Because Tarantino and Rodriguez
actually they're both Grindhouse.
No, but I mean the film, the 2007 film Grindhouse?
Yes, they're both Grindhouse.
No, the 2007 film. There was a film called... Do you remember when Planet Terror and Death Proof came in the same box?
No. See, that's what always phases me. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do the Tarantino Rodriguez joint From Dusk Till Dawn and the Tarantino Rodriguez joint 4 Rooms.
Excellent. So we're going to do 2 movies, both of which have some element of Tarantino and Rodriguez in them.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah, we couldn't do it in the beginning of the year to hit the year off because we had way too much other stuff to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a long time. I mean, we really haven't done this since Pulp Fiction and Sin City.
We've been nice.
And this is kind of a real weird one that we need to get back to. So I'm going to ruin the ending.
Great. And I'm excited to watch more fucking film.
Bye.
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I'm here doing double feature with Michael Kester.
Yeah, we're going to do double feature for a change.
Deep Red is one movie. What's the other movie we're doing?
The Gore Gore Girls.
These are films that pet the white cat.
Yeah.
And we talked about that last episode.
Yeah.
Is when films seem like they're a lot harder than they are.
It's when you're scared by it's when you judge a film by its cover. And you
Yeah,
and your
basically.
judgment is that the film is terrifyingly heady and difficult, but it turns out that somebody in the film, that the villain turns around in
Things.
trailers.
Spoilers. Yeah, I mean,
The weird things that are called spoilers are trailers.
I mean, details from the movie.
Yeah.
I really don't even want to know what city the third act takes
Yep.
place in. But most people don't want to know who done it. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
That's probably what I care about least in a
Yeah.
movie. But that's what most people don't want to know. And you're going to find that out, maybe, in this episode.
Now, if you
of
don't want
Double
to,
Feature.
I suppose you could just chapter over all the way to the end and find out what we're doing next week.
You could use the chapters. You could also use the timestamps, which you'll find in the lyrics section and on the great Double Feature website at doublefeatureshow.com.
Doublefeatureshow.com.
You remember when we used to talk about donations every week and how grating that was on your ears? Now I'm just
Yeah.
going to mention the website every fucking week,
Yeah.
and you're going to wish I asked for money. You're going to beg for
In
us to
fact,
ask
if
for
you
money.
if you send us a fixed amount of money that we are setting in our brains right now,
Yeah.
we will stop talking about the website.
Oh, good. I like this. Hold the listeners' ears ransom. Deep Red is going to be the first movie, and we're not there yet. We haven't chaptered.
Yeah.
Don't skip yet. There are sections that are inexplicably in Italian,
Yes.
and that's not just your copy of the movie.
Uh-huh.
You need subtitles.
Okay.
We watched a little bit of the film without subtitles
Yep.
because I forgot.
Yep.
I watched all of Mario Argento in pretty much 1 week of my life.
Uh-huh.
A bad idea.
Yeah.
I have some trouble telling the films apart.
Sure.
It was really, I wish I spaced that out more. I didn't remember we needed subtitles.
That's okay.
Thankfully, I literally left my apartment, ran to a neighbor, got subtitles from her, and then injected them into our copy. Technical wizardry.
Now, you may also notice that in a standard whodunit murder mystery fashion, it sounds like a rainy storm is going on in our studio. That's intentional.
Right.
That's part of, we're trying to set the mood.
We've been getting,
But
these
in a
seem,
different way.
Yeah, these seem like the usual celebration
Sure.
misogyny.
These are grindhouse misogyny.
Yeah, so
where it's actually secretly celebrating.
right. Where, hey, aren't women great looking naked?
That's
and
about
isn't
right.
this fun? And I don't know if it just feels wrong when Crank and Shoot 'Em Up do it.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
want to
true.
get into a discussion about why they're different or what. It just feels wrong when Crank and Shoot 'Em Up do it.
You know what else feels wrong is spoiling films before people have seen them.
Yeah, for 160 something odd weeks, we have been spoiling movies, except for those 2 crappy music box shows and the year end, which I don't know why anyone listens to. But listen to this show, but not if you've not seen the movies.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Well, especially because these are kind of murder mystery Scooby-Doo-esque.
They
There's
are.
actually part of the film is not knowing how it's going to end.
Whereas people like you and myself consider weird.
A swivel chair and pets the white cat.
Right. It's
Says-
a fucking cartoon. It's just a film, people. I mean, really speaking broader, that's what our entire show is
Yep.
about. If these 2 idiots can understand movies, then really anyone can do it. These are 2 movies specifically where the directors are talked about as if they're, masters
Behemoths
of their
of
craft.
cinema.
And whether or not they are masters of their craft is irrelevant. But what goes along with that is that their craft, the end result may be complicated and hard to understand. And it's really not. It's quite consumable.
Sure.
And we should make people very aware of that.
What we didn't talk about last episode was misogyny.
Oh, God. Yeah, you know what? We apologized in advance, and it wasn't good enough.
Well, we apologize. What happened is we apologized in advance for one show, but now we have to retroactively re-apologize because we didn't apologize for this show last week.
That's probably fine. I think there's I guess these are misogynistic.